Cheryl Bowden here. I'm going to be going over several different things today. First of all, the Carbonlight Black, which is the new reel by Johnny Morris, has a few new features for this year. Going to be going over that. Going to be going over some spooling, how to save yourself some money, but also talking about the new carbon lights that are technique specific. And so I'm going to be getting this one geared up and ready for my event coming up on Toledo Bend. But I'm going to show you, first of all, as I'm talking about this again, we're going to talk about the reel. We're going to talk about a few things on that. I'll switch cameras so you're seeing it from a different perspective because I want to show you some things that I think are really, really important. And then finally, I'm going to show you how you can save yourself some money on your line. We all know that fluorocarbon is expensive. All lines expensive, maybe not the mono, but fluorocarbon's expensive. Do we really, really, really need to have 120 yards of fluorocarbon on a spool in order to be effective? So we're going to talk about those things. So we're going to switch camera angles and show you some things that we're going to do to help save you some money and how we're going to set up this particular reel. So as we said earlier, we were going to talk to you guys about the new Johnny Morris Carbonlight Black. Maybe a little hard to see here because it is black. Some specs on this particular one. There are two different gear ratios. I chose the 6:8 because I'm going to be using this most likely on a chatterbait. That's the new technique specific rod that I was talking about. So let's talk a little bit about this reel. So as we pull it out here, again, a couple of new features. They've changed the braking system here on the side. It's now this little wheel versus where it was a knob before. Other than that, it has a little slimmer look, very similar to the previous ones. Again, the black. Inside the box, there are going to be some things that we are going to need to know, or not necessarily need to know, but good to know stuff. So you're going to have this pamphlet inside that's going to help you with your lubrication. Where to oil, where to lube, where to put grease, and so forth. They come out of the box ready to go, but those things are going to be important for you to be able to do. Another thing too, because this is a 6:8 you got your parts guide in there too, but a 6:8 one of the things that's going to be important for you is to understand how much line is returned each turn of the handle. Now, this one being a 6:8 we know that it is going to have 28 inches every single turn. So that's 2 feet of line that's going to be taken up. It has a max drag of 14, very lightweight. We're going to be looking here because of what I'm looking at this 12 on the mono, or that would be 50 yards. 50 pound would be 100 yards of the braid. We're going to be talking about that here in just a few moments. So a couple of things that we are going to look at, we'll leave this kind of out and so forth, is give it a little bit of a white background. There are several different things as far as the number of bearings and so forth. This is a 10-9 on the bearings. You can adjust the centrifugal braking system as well as the magnetic braking system. So centrifugal brake is inside this cover. The magnetic braking system is here going 0 to 10. So if you pull out this little knob right here and you twist this side plate, the palm plate will come off. Put your finger inside here to hold it in place and pull this off, and you're going to see these centrifugal brakes inside. Now, if these are out where they move freely, I don't know if you can see it or not, that one moves freely. So I've got 4 of them that are set freely, and I've got 2 of them that are locked into place. And so when they are set freely, as your reel spins, they move out and they automatically brake. It is recommended that you start with 2 of these. So I've got 2 of these. I've got this one and this one. They need to be opposite of one another. I've got them popped in so that my brakes will spin a little bit more freely. You do this, and you can make the adjustments between the centrifugal and the centrifugal. That's the word I'm looking for. Centrifugal and the magnetic, in order to keep yourself and reduce the backlashes. Again, we're going to put the plate back on here. And then we mentioned the magnetic braking system, and it runs everywhere from a 0 here at this little knob all the way up to a 10. This is the easiest one to change once you kind of get a feel for things, depending on the amount of wind. I use a lot of thumb pressure to reduce the speed on mine. Most of the time I typically start with mine on about a 3 or so. That's just a general starting point. This is brand new from Cabela's and Bass Pro Shops with the Carbonlight Black. Again, very light. These are currently I believe $119, which is the very same price as the Carbonlight that you're used to seeing. You've probably seen the 2.0, but they have a new white Carbonlight that is just like the black, difference in the color. You have more gear ratio options on the white than you do on the black. So check these out at your nearest Bass Pro and Cabela's. So Cheryl Bowden here. I love to use fluorocarbon, and my preference is the Bass Pro XPS fluorocarbon. This being 12 pounds, it's 1,000 yards. Well, this spool runs you right around $100 in that neighborhood. Well, if you're like me, my budget will not be able to go through. And if you think about it, if I spool up a rod, or excuse me, I spool up a reel, and I put 120 yards on there, well, that means I can only get, you know what, maybe not even 10 reels on here. Well, that goes by pretty quick. But by using the technique of putting a base of mono on, covering that base with electrical tape, I now can go through and I can save myself some money. Reality is, I cannot cast 100 yards. Reality is, I probably can't cast 50 yards. If you think about it in boat lengths, my cast, I can probably go 4 boat lengths, maybe 5, sometimes 6, depending on the weight. Well, 6 boat lengths at 21-foot boat, you just make it a 20, that you're talking about 120, so you're only talking I can cast about 40 yards. So why do I want to put 120 yards of expensive line on when I can put half a spool of mono on, cover it with electrical tape, make a brand new base so that if I do have a bad backlash, it doesn't get caught in the knot where I tied the 2 lines together. It's a clean spool. I know how far to pull it off. It's done. Then I put on my fluorocarbon or braid. I do the same thing with my braid. And now my backlash can only go so deep. I'm only putting on enough line for what I'm going to use. I'm not wasting it. And so when I go to retie, I'm also saving myself money because, or not retie, but respool. Then I'm not wasting a whole lot of line that never gets used. So I hope these tips and I hope what I'm about to show you will be of benefit. So as we're getting ready, one of the things that I will do is I get my line mounted. I want to make sure that my spool is coming over the top as I'm pulling line off. And the reason I do that is because when I am turning the handle of this reel, it is spinning toward me. I want the line to be coming off of that spool and onto the reel in the same direction so that it reduces that line twist. I always start with my reel off of my spooler. That is just my preference. It gives me an opportunity to be able to manipulate and not have to do as many things for twisting around. You can decide what works best for you. The spoolers you can get at Bass Pro and Cabela's, easy enough. Once I get my line through, I'm going to start with tying a knot in the very end and clipping off the excess. Now you have the choice, obviously, of scissors. I like these little clippers for this particular part. But I will use my scissors to kind of help me, or if you've got some little loop thing that you can, to pull your line through so that you can get your hand on it a little easier. And of course, you know, when you're trying to do something in a hurry. And so what I will now do, I will check and make sure that it's not through anything there. As far as it's over the spool, I'm going to take and I'm going to tie this knot around the line that's coming through. And then I'm going to pull that knot down as tight as I possibly can. And then as I cinch this down, it is going to tie up really nicely. I don't really care on this mono if it is on the side or not. When I get to my fluorocarbon, I want it to be in a specific spot. will secure this thing down. Now I don't want to make it too tight, but I do want my spool to be relatively even. I want my knot to be as flat as possible. And so while I've got my spindle up here, raise this up just a little bit, I've got this relatively tight. I want to help, I typically always, for me, like to help make sure that the line goes all the way over the edge of that spool. And again, I'm going to be guesstimating to where I'm at about halfway. Remembering that each turn of this reel is 2 feet. Also remember too that the electrical tape that I'm going to be using is going to take up some of the space, and so I don't want to get too much on there, but I want to make sure I get enough that I'm not wasting any line. All right, I'm going to say that that is probably about a half a spool for you guys trying to see this. Take it off and kind of show you what I'm talking about here. That's about a half a spool. I could probably go a few more turns and it wouldn't hurt anything. In this case, I do want my mono line to end up in the middle because I do not want it to interfere with anything on the sides. I will close that off up there. I'm going to set my drag kind of tight with the star drag here on the side. And I'm going to have my black electrical tape go in the same direction that I had my line going. And I'm going to start on one side. Make sure that this is where you guys can see what I'm doing here. It only takes 2 rounds to get this done. And notice I also did it right on top of that line. I'm now going to clip this line. And I can do it with my hand here, and I'm just going to begin to work it all the way around, pulling off a little bit of the electrical tape. I want it to be over to the sides all the way to prevent any of my fluorocarbon that I'm going to put on next, or whatever line, from getting off in the edges. I'm almost back to the beginning now. And now I'm going to go over and I'm going to have it cover the other side. Try to keep it as smooth as you possibly can. And I know that there are going to be some people who do not agree with this. They're like, I'll just tie the 2 ends of my line together. And you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. What I find, though, is that if I tend to get a really big backlash, don't get them very often, but it doesn't take very often to ruin your day, that if I get one that's really bad, it invariably goes past the knot where I put my 2 lines together. And now I have to take everything off in order to get it done. All right, so once I'm back around and I've covered it totally, I'll use my scissors to clip it off. And this is where the drag being tight all the way is important. I will crank it down and run my thumb over it to get it to smooth out and mold to the actual spool. All right, so I have my fluorocarbon tied back on here, or back on my spooler. And we're going to go here. I'm going to go ahead and take this reel off. The tie is just the same as it was before. I'm going to run it through the worm opening, back through here, get my line free. I will get my knot tied in here. Just a simple overhand knot. Pull it down tight. Clip off the excess. And then with my scissors, I will try to reach in here and grab a little bit. Or if you've got a sewing, a crochet needle, you can do it with that. This time though, once I tie my overhead knot over the line, which I know this is really not very easy to see, I can do it. I know how to do it. my hands get in the way. There's my knot. I'm going to pull this down. This time I do want my knot into one of the corners, one of the edges of the spool. It doesn't matter which direction. I'll start to pull it down. I like for it to be there so that I'm not feeling that knot whenever I'm doing any of my casting. All right, let's get this back out here. Pull our line out. I've got a little bit of a mess up there with my spool. All right, we've got our spool fixed. So what had happened is this had gone loose. It had wrapped around these. You need to make sure that you keep that lined up. So just to give you an idea, we'd said that each turn of the handle is going to end up being 24 inches. So by being 24 inches, that means by 10 turns of the handle with this fluorocarbon now, I'm going to have 80 yards of line on. You're welcome to count if you want to. We'll go through and see, but I want you to watch as we go through and we do this. Alrighty, we're going to stop right there. I don't have it quite balanced. I have a little bit more on this side than this side. This particular rod is part of the Cabela's and Bass Pro's technique-specific rods. This particular one happens to be the one for the bladed jig. It is a 7.3 heavy. Again, I just got it. And so you're talking, if you were to head off to your Bass Pro and Cabela's right now, it is $129, $129.99. And so I'm going to be putting the Carbonlight Black, the new reel on it. Fits nicely into the seat here. I will, when I am doing this, once I've got my line on, I will set the star drag really, really light so that I can pull line. That way I don't push the button and end up with a major backlash before I ever get started. We have the micro guides, which is great. A lot smoother, a lot of smoothness in the cast on this. And get all of these done. Spring of the year. One of the reasons that we have chosen the bladed jig as an option for what we're doing is spring of the year. It is a really good search bait. It's just a good all-around bait for this time of the year for the fish. You get the vibration in the water. So if you've got a little bit of mud, that extra vibration, the lateral line on the fish will go through and they can feel it. All right, so we've got this thing all spooled up. And so as we mentioned, we're going to be doing a bladed jig. This particular bladed jig that I'm going to be tying on, it is a 1/2 ounce. It is the traditional chatterbait. There are several other choices that you have that you can pick up at Bass Pro Cabela's for your choices. On this one, let me get this thing tied on here. I'm choosing to use a craw color because I know that craws tend to be more red this time of the year, in my area anyway. You can decide what works best in your area, but this is a pretty common color. This particular knot is one that I like. It gives me a lot of flexibility. It's very durable. Be sure you wet it all down. And so with your bladed jig, again, the flexibility of this rod and reel setup, I'm excited about it. As far as what I'm going to do next, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go through and I'm going to use these nifty little clippers here. Clip that off relatively close because that knot allows that. And then my trailer for this particular one is going to be this little Fire Pumpkin Super Shad from Bass Pro Shops. I'm going to match it with the color. I like the Super Shad, and I'm choosing it because it's got a little bit of a fat body, but the tail on it wiggles, and with the extra vibration, this should be a really enticing and very appealing for the bass whenever we get down to where the tournament is on Toledo Bend here in this next week. So once you get it fed on, push it all the way up and over so it seats. I've got my nice straight little bait there. And so we are all ready for our technique specific Johnny Morris Carbonlight bladed jig rod with a Carbonlight Black reel and a 6 to 8 to 1. I chose the 6 to 8 to 1 as a slower retrieve because I don't want to over reel whenever I'm fishing this. Hope this helps you guys out as you're on the water. Have a good day.